Hello, everyone, and welcome to Picture the Scene podcast, hosted by me, Andrew.
And me, Rachel.
Now, please note that this is a true crime podcast, so our listener caution is advised. We hope after this episode you won't ever be convinced to buy a Manolo title. We would love you to interact with us on our social media platforms. We are active on them, albeit with differing frequency, and I'll leave a link to all of them in the show notes. So, how are you, Rachel? How have you been?
Yeah, good, thanks, Mr. O. How about you? I don't call you Mr. O. Sorry. Do you mind if I start that again?
No, we can leave that in. We'll leave that
Oh,
in.
right, okay. Okay, cool.
I don't mind Mr. O. Makes me sound important. I've been good. We had CrimeCon.
Yes, you did. Tell me, what was the most exciting takeaway from CrimeCon?
People recognising me, Rachel.
Oh,
How we said
go
it
on.
last time, someone recognised you. I had two people recognise me, recognise my voice. First was a lovely lady. Now, I was so excited that you recognised me. It was in the Seeing Red live podcast recording before we launched, before they started recording. I forgot to ask her name. I was that excited that someone recognised me. So
Your first ever fan and you can't remember her name.
I know I never asked it because it was afterwards. I was thinking, oh no. So hi.
Whoever you are.
Yes, really, you made my year. I'll give you a shout out next time if you let me know what your name is. And I'm sorry I didn't ask. And also, secondly, someone else said this, Samantha, and now I managed to get her name.
Hi, Samantha.
And yes, and she even wanted a photograph with me.
Wow. So that's a real fan, right?
I felt like Tom Cruise.
Well played. Well played. So other than getting recognised at CrimeCon, any other key takeaways?
Um, lots of opinions about event management, which I won't go into. But
Okay.
the takeaways were just that it's fun to hear about
Yeah.
murder and crime and stuff like that, and I just have to accept that I'm a little bit strange.
Was it busy there?
Oh,
Was it like packed?
it was busy-ish, yeah. 500 odd people. Takeaway is Mark Randall
Oh yeah.
from the Seeing Red podcast. He's like 6 foot tall.
Wow.
I think I have a thing where I always think everyone's a midget.
And then you
Small
meet people
person.
like me and you realise that I am.
No, but I always thought Mark was really short.
Oh wow.
I don't know if
Did you
you're allowed
tell
to.
him that?
Yeah. Uh,
Okay.
I don't know if we're allowed to use the word midget, so apologies if not. It's not intentional offence meant. But he's like 6 foot tall,
Wow.
and he's a
Fun
nice man,
fact of the day.
obviously.
Mark Randall, tall and talented.
And he told me that he listened to our podcast.
Oh wow. Well, you've just made my year.
There you go. So anyway, are you ready for that all important question? And we know obviously the all important question is it a cheese or a cheese and ham toasty?
On a Breville.
Yes.
I'm just going to shatter your dreams now. I'm actually not a fan of cheese.
Well, that's okay because there's nothing better. The real answer to that question is corned beef. Corned beef and
Wow.
tomato.
You just took it to a whole different toasty level.
I did. So, other than that, though, are you ready for some true crime?
I am absolutely ready for some true crime and to get off the topic of cheese. Definitely.
Yeah, though, you're a bit weird. You probably will be a serial killer then if you don't like cheese. So, everyone, if it's safe for you to do so, I'd like you to relax. Close your eyes and picture the scene. I'd like to take us back to the mid-90s. That time in history when you were either Oasis or Blur. I was actually Pulp Rose or neither, but every summer felt like it was boiling hot. The future held no fear, and it felt like life was good, and it was only going to get better. You may have been into grunge, a raver, into the house scene, a skater, goth, preppy, hip-hop, or one of the many other trends that existed at the time. People were happy expressing themselves, and not fitting into a couple of stereotypes. Instead, there was lots of stereotypes. So, I'd like to introduce you to Stefanos Kallakis and Martin Lewis. They were friends from the University of Buckingham, and they'd built up a bond. Now, by the time the mid-90s were on them, they had finished university, they were in the mid-20s, and they seemingly had a good future ahead of them. Stefanos was known to be a confident, assertive individual who at times when it was needed could be arrogant. We know the type. The ones who are always so sure of themselves and what they do. He had tried his hand in a couple of different professions, including working as a travel agent in Croydon. On the other hand, Martin was known to be self-effacing, quiet and unassuming, with his colleagues at the time saying that he was no more to sit at his desk on his lunch enjoying a pot noodle than interacting and mixing with people.
My kind of man.
Martin did, however, have a conviction for fraud.
Oh.
In February of 1993, he used the names of dead people.
When he was at university?
He'd finished, so they were at university. And
Oh, sorry. Right, okay. Wow,
so
okay.
he'd used the names of dead people to obtain real passports for people that wanted British passports.
Wow.
Now, he claimed to have committed a crime because a girlfriend of his from China couldn't return, so he wanted to help her out. He wasn't believed, though, partly probably because he'd done it several times, but he didn't receive a prison sentence. Community order, actually. So, well, here we have two polar opposites, but ones that had formed a bond. One thing they did have in common, though, was a desire to get ahead, to succeed. Initially, they tried to do it legally. They wanted to open up and run a lobster farm, for example, but that didn't work out. So together they devised a plan to sell manorial titles, which is feudal titles, to Americans, and make themselves rich that way. There was only one slight problem with that approach, though. These titles didn't exist. So a manorial title is where you sell the title of lord or lady to someone.
I remember this. Well, I don't remember this particular case, but yeah, my friend became a lord of some part of land in Scotland. And yeah, it was quite interesting because he was able to change his passport and all of his bank accounts off of the back of this piece of paper that he bought for like £250 or something.
Now, technically, he wasn't a lord, you know.
No, exactly. It was a bit wild. And the reason why I remember it was because a couple of months or maybe a year or two later, somebody tried to become lord of where I live, and there was absolute uproar because it's a small place, and like absolute uproar, and then it brought into dispute all of these titles that have been sold in previous years and how they actually weren't worth the paper that they were written on.
Yeah, technically they were selling people. I'm going off on a tangent here, but
yeah.
While we're talking about it, they were selling people the Scottish title of Laird, Laird,
yeah,
which could translate into Lord.
Yeah.
But a Laird is basically anyone that owns a piece of land in Scotland. It doesn't make them a lord. So they were selling people like a 1 square foot piece of land.
Yeah.
Telling them they were a lord. When in reality, these pieces of land actually most of the time didn't even exist anyway. But that's not what Martin and Stefanos does. I'm just talking about your friend. But yeah, and I have to say, people, because we're on Zoom and I'm looking at Rachel and she has got the most amazing top on today. I have to credit you for that. That's awesome.
Thanks. Zara special.
Is it Zara?
Zara, yeah. High Street.
I don't shop in Zara.
Other high street brands are available.
They are indeed. No. So they sold titles, feudal titles to American tourists to make themselves rich that way. Yes, but they didn't actually exist. Now, one of the Americans that they sold a title to would actually go on to become a congressman for Louisiana. He served 12 years before stepping down. Now, it was widely accepted that the titles were purchased in the hope of the people that bought them that it helped them get a better social standing and also get them access to the Queen's social list. So
Wow.
get them access to parties that the Queen attended so they could meet the Queen. And obviously that's what they were told by Martin and Stephanus, but it wasn't true. So they didn't make much money, they didn't become richer, and they were quickly caught, sent for trial, pled guilty, and they received a community order each. Now, for those of you listening outside of the UK, a community order is just a sentence, usually of a fine and or unpaid hours to work in the community. Now, I believe they have them in the States, but maybe they're not called the same thing. I think they have them in the States because I saw it on Better Call Saul. But yeah, so many years after that conviction, Stephanus showed no full remorse. He would go on to say that it was a misunderstanding and that he received incorrect legal advice that genuine titles could be lawfully subdivided and sold separately. So that's it. What do you think of today's case, Rachel? World's worst true crime episode, maybe?
You're joking.
I am joking, yes. So, unfortunately, that wasn't it for these two. It was only the beginning for them. Upon clearing of their community orders, they realised, quite rightly so, that they were never going to get rich or stay out of prison selling fake feudal titles to unsuspecting Americans who wanted a connection with history and to be part of the perceived social elite. So we've had forged passports, we've had lobsters, we've had fake peerages. What do you think next is on the horizon for these two?
I don't know.
Well, I'm going to give you a taster now before I get onto it. It involves helicopters, TV shows, suicide attempts,
Did one of them?
And jury nobbling, to name but a few things.
Did one of them become the Tinder swindler?
No, unfortunately not. He would have been way too old by the time Tinder became a thing.
Yeah.
What the pair immediately did, once their 160 hours of community service was completed, that is, was to change their names legally. So, Stephanos Kallakis became Achilleas Kallakis. So a different first name and a surname changed by changing the first O to an A. Martin Lewis changed his name to Alexander Williams. So I'm now going to refer to them both as Kallakis and Williams, respectively. But it's the same two people. Now, you know, some might say, well, they've got every right to change their name. It doesn't mean they're going to go and commit a crime. Now, others would say it would be to help them carry on committing crime. Now, I'm going to let you all decide which is which here. I will, however, before I continue, give you a quote straight from Kallakis himself as to why he changed his name. He said, "The reason was because I had done something wrong that was utterly illegal. I paid a price with a community service order. It was time for a fresh start and to move forwards in business." So you could say that's reasonable enough, isn't it? He served his time, did his due. He wanted to forget about it.
I think that's, respectable. And, I guess in those days, harder to do, obviously, the kind of searches that we're able to do in this day and age. So it would have been quite easy to wipe the slate clean, start again. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's not like they killed someone.
No.
Obviously, nothing's good and fraud's not good, but...
just white-collar crime.
So business indeed was what Kallakis had in mind. While he had an ordinary upbringing, very middle class, he did have a very wealthy relative. His uncle was a wealthy shipping magnate called Lou Kallakis, I'm going to get these words wrong, who is currently valued at around £200 million, but he was once, at one point, a billionaire, but he's not now. So the house that Kallakis lived in, Stephanos Kallakis, who I'm talking about, was at one point worth $1.35 million. It was purchased via a trust linked to his wealthy uncle, and also £350,000 from his uncle Lou. Kallakis would officially be classed as an advisor to the trust, receiving a daily wage. This is in the 90s. A daily wage of £750.
Wow.
But he didn't have the final say in what that trust did. That was held by a Swiss lawyer who I couldn't find out with certainty his name. I think because, and I'll get onto that later.
Okay.
The beneficiaries of the trust would be the children of Kallakis. Now, as the years went by, the trust formed a core base for Kallakis' business dealings, as he did become a successful businessman. He was dealing in properties worth hundreds of millions of pounds. So successful was he that he became somewhat of a minor celebrity. He was a poker player who appeared on the poker TV shows Poker Den, The Big Game, and a televised Party Poker European Open, and the World Open, among others. He once won a game worth $1 million, and his poker nickname was the Don. He was famed for his ability to bluff and never let his opponents figure out what he was holding, what cards he was holding. So I think that goes hand in hand. He was a good poker player because of the way he did business.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious as to why his uncle was so trusting with him.
Relative, isn't it?
Yeah, but if his uncle would have definitely known about his criminal past. It would have just been, the rich don't get richer by making mistakes like putting criminals.
You don't forget he was an advisor to the trust, so he couldn't make the final choices.
Yeah.
And the trust beneficiaries were his children, not him.
Right. I still think there's an element of risk there, though, isn't there?
Yeah, probably. Well, maybe their daily wage was to try and keep him out of trouble.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, if I pay you enough, you can keep clean.
£750 a day. It's a nice.
Yeah, yeah. Wouldn't say no to that, would you?
Yeah.
Wonder whether he had a 5-day or 7-day working week.
You'd never have a day off, would you?
Nope.
He would be so successful that he would have, and we're talking about Stephanos here, he would have homes all around the world. He'd have a super yacht in Monaco. He would be seen on holidays with Prince Albert of Monaco, along with claiming to be an ambassador for the country of San Marino, and on the board of the British National Portrait Gallery.
Would none of these people have done their due diligence about his change of name?
Maybe, maybe not. You don't know, do you?
No.
Interesting. He would have at one point a fleet of chauffeur-driven Bentleys, and he flew between Mayfair and Monaco either on his private jet or in his helicopter.
Wow.
As you do. He never made any apologies for his wealth, and all the trappings that came with it, and he became a recognisable face in all of the top casinos around the world. It did seem like he had made it, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. He's got the kind of life that I could lead, for sure.
He had gone from being a travel agent in Croydon to being one of the wealthiest people in the UK.
Wow.
Exactly. But what about his partner Williams? Or Lewis before he changed his name. What happened to him?
What about him? I feel like he went the opposite way.
Well, he was still there. He was still Stephanos Kallakis' business partner.
Oh, wow.
He just preferred to shun the limelight, and he lived a quiet, reserved life. You could almost say that their lives mirrored their personality. One was outgoing, and one was reserved.
Yeah, eating his pot noodles.
Yes, exactly. Now, it's nice to have an happy ending, isn't it, Rachel? They all made hundreds of millions of pounds and they lived happy ever after. That's how this ends, isn't it?
Yeah, and the only people that suffered were the non-lords and ladies of places that never existed.
Unfortunately not, though. Kallakis would go on to be labelled the biggest confidence scam artist that the UK had ever seen. And he was aided by his friend, Williams, who was described as a versatile and prolific forger, adding the skill and the trickery into the confidence that Kallakis provided. The pair of them was said to be assisted by an unnamed and yet to be charged or convicted Swiss lawyer. Now, how did all of this happen, you have to ask?
I'm excited to find out.
So the two of them operated from an office in a very exclusive part of London, Mayfair, with Kallakis pretending to be a property tycoon and Williams his financial consultant. The two of them claimed to operate as a Pacific group. I say claimed because the business never actually existed. Even Kallakis begrudgingly admitted this once he was caught, saying that it was a convenient description of the collection of genuine companies he had for himself. He described it in his own words as a more appropriate way of doing business. Now, under the guise of the name of the Pacific Group, the pair of them produced paperwork showing the companies he was involved in, fake paperwork that is, guaranteed rental incomes on a number of properties regardless if these properties actually had tenants or not. It will later be revealed in court from evidence from these companies that it wouldn't be the case. It was all fake. Over the course of 5 years, they managed to convince an Irish bank, Allied Irish Banks, known as AIB, into lending them £740 million
Wow.
to complete property deals. Now, all of the property and deals were real. What wasn't real, though, was the inflated prices they claimed the property was worth, which meant they were able to profit about £60 million from those 16 deals for themselves, along with any additional genuine profits. Now, additionally, they convinced the Bank of Scotland to loan them €29 million so they could turn a former passenger ferry into a super yacht. Now, the ferry was in fact leaking and contaminated with asbestos. The properties they bought were sought-after homes in Mayfair and Knightsbridge, along with commercial properties such as the Home Office buildings in Croydon and the Telegraph Media Group's headquarters in Victoria. To maintain a pretense and get the loans, they employed several techniques. Along with the fake references and paperwork, it included hiring actors, offshore trusts, like the one he was a consultant to, and fake backing from his uncle's shipping empire. It wasn't just AIB and the Bank of Scotland that they fooled, though. Other lenders they tricked were Barclays, Bristol & West, along with GE Capital. Now, rather surprisingly, before they'd been found out, they were audited by the HMRC, which is the tax office of the government, for those not in the UK, in 2005. But they managed to successfully fool the HMRC, with the tax office at the time declaring themselves happy with the companies and their affairs. Now, you won't believe some of the ways they managed to trick the bankers. One of the companies they said they were guarantees for them was a company based in Hong Kong, a real company called Sun Hung Kai Properties, or SHKP as it's known. But their banks were told that it was just one catch. You won't believe this, Rachel. If they tried to contact the company directly, it would scupper the deal and that company would withdraw their support.
Oh my God.
Now,
the bank fell for it.
Yes. Now, any paperwork needed to support this was all forged by Williams. Now, it would later be revealed at court that such was the bank's eagerness to grow a bigger portfolio of property that if anyone initially questioned within the bank the arrangement, they'd literally be shouted down angrily and told to be quiet.
Because they'd probably intimidated the bank manager into, like, if you don't lend it to me, I'll just go and find another bank and I'll get a better rate and I'll pull all my money.
This is bank workers who would shout angrily at other bank workers who tried to question it. Yeah, but they did, yeah.
Intimidation was the thing. I used to work in a call centre, and this is obviously the days for like voice biometrics and being able to identify somebody through their, like, even through the age of their voice or anything, because phone lines are that poor, like, and people were like, it just wasn't great. But a lot of the time, if you had somebody trying to intimidate you, there was a higher chance that they were actually a fraudster and not the client. But some people fell for it, hook, line, and sinker.
Exactly. Now, eventually, enough people did raise questions at AIB, and it was only when bankers from AIB started arranging to go to Hong Kong to meet the SHKP company that Kallakis reluctantly agreed to set up a meeting. The bank was told that Jonathan Lee would divert his trip back to Hong Kong from the States to meet the bankers in the UK, and that he was a director within the Treasury Department for SHKP. While the bankers found it odd that when they did meet Lee, that he didn't even have a business card, they were impressed by him and his knowledge of the loans Kallakis wanted and the questions he asked the bankers, and they were ultimately satisfied. Now, it would later be revealed that SHKP never had an employee on their books called Jonathan Lee, and if the bank had done some research, they would have realised that SHKP didn't even have a Treasury Department. The only evidence that Jonathan Lee ever existed was found on Williams' computer with a file labelled Common Chinese Names and another file labelled Background History of J. Lee.
Wow. I
Yes.
feel like as well that like you saying like this really dates this case by saying they found it strange he didn't even have a business card. Like, God,
Yeah. This is in like the late 90s now we're talking
yeah.
about. But
Oh yeah.
they were only caught, however, because when AIB sought to sell some of its loans to a German bank, the German bank actually did their own checks.
Actual due
Yes.
diligence.
Including hiring a private investigator, and he found out that Kallakis had a previous conviction for fraud, so they
Wow.
performed a full investigation.
So when a bank is buying debt off another bank, they can hire private investigators.
I guess so,
That's
yeah.
to me that's pretty intense. Like
This is a lot of debt, though, isn't it?
it is, but a private investigator almost insinuates that there's definitely something dodgy. Unless
Exactly.
yeah, AIB were like trying to shift like be dead shifty getting it off their books quickly.
Possibly, yeah. So the pair were originally tried in 2011 after this. However, due to claims of attempts to bribe the jury, along with a
Of
failed
course.
yeah, of course, along with a failed suicide attempt by Williams,
Oh
that
wow.
trial collapsed, and it'd be another 2 years before they were sent to trial again. Now, throughout the second trial, Kallakis maintained his innocence.
Hmm.
He maintained that nothing was ever forged and it was all real. Kallakis was sentenced in the end to 7 years in prison, with Williams 5 years after being found guilty, both of them.
That's not even that much, is it? We're talking millions of pounds they've made here.
Listen to
5 and
this.
7 years.
Listen to this, though. They will go on to appeal their sentences, but unluckily for them on appeal, their sentences were increased. That's unlucky, isn't it? So Kallakis went from 7 years to 11 years, and
Wow.
Williams went from 5 years to 8 years.
Then they're not massive sentences, though, are they?
Still not massive, no. So a year after the conviction, in 2014, Kallakis was ordered to pay back 3.25 million.
Wow.
Within 6 months, all faced serving another 7 years in jail, and Williams was ordered to pay back 500,000, or face an additional 3 years in jail. So even as late as 2020, it hadn't finished, with Kallakis' son taking AIB to court and suing them, claiming that the bank illegally sold off his father's property portfolio. And last year, the Serious Fraud Office took Kallakis back to court to attempt to increase the confiscation order amount higher than the original 3.25 million.
Mm.
So obviously, they believe that he's got more money than they originally thought. Now, the judge at the trial put the blame solely on the pair, but he also heavily criticised the banks and the banking culture at the time, pre to the banking crash of 2008. The judge also noted that at one point AIB was warned, listen to this, at one point, before they got found out by the German bank, AIB was warned by its own lawyers not to take what the Swiss lawyer said at face value, as he could be part of the fraud. But that warning was ignored.
So the lawyers were actually indicating that this could be fraud.
Yes, don't just take
Wow.
the word for it.
Yeah. That was the culture at the time, though,
Yeah,
wasn't it? Like,
money,
and
money, money.
do anything you can do to secure more income, like debt, get our balances up. Like, that's crazy. Wonder if anyone got the sack.
Possibly, or possibly not. So now, Rachel, I'll give you a couple of false starts, but we are really at the end. So what do you
Okay.
think? What do you think about all of that?
I mean, like, I'm really intrigued by fraud and this kind of crime because when in retrospect, when you look back, there are always so many opportunities to catch and stop it from happening. And when you see like television documentaries, or shows that glorify it. Like, and when I say documentaries, I'm thinking about there's a Sky documentary on the man who bought cricket, and that was a Ponzi scheme. And then there was obviously the the Anna Delvey Netflix drama that completely dramatized that fraud. I'm always intrigued by like the moments in time when you could have spot and caught, and that person or those people wouldn't have been so like far down the line that they eventually got. So yeah, I do potentially enjoy hearing more about this crime, because also there tends to be less death as well, which is obviously a good thing.
Exactly. And I always think about the actor, the Chinese actor they got to play Jonathan Lee. Obviously,
Yeah.
they never found out who he was, but they must have paid him some decent money, eh?
Well, you know what? You see this happen a lot. Louis Theroux did a documentary on Scientology. I don't know whether you've ever watched it,
That was a
but
long time
he
ago.
he employed a load of actors to portray characters in the Church of Scientology so that he could recreate scenes that he'd heard of, and avoid like being brought to court for filming like real life people when he wasn't allowed to. And these actors, I remember they got interviewed down the line, and at the time they were kind of like taking any jobs, and they were just keen for work. And there was something that I watched in some of the outtakes on YouTube that were like these people had been employed to play all sorts of roles, and they would just be given a script and they wouldn't ask any questions. And the idea was like, do you not want to find out if you're being asked to do something illegally, or are you just so involved in the role, in the element of role play and thrill and the fact that you're getting paid that you just don't care? And that tended to be the answer, like, just don't care. It's just, for me, it's an opportunity to work.
I
And as long
guess
as I get paid, like, there's no kind of, I don't ask questions. But it obviously happens more often than we find out about, doesn't it, with this
I,
kind of stuff?
I guess, and now you said that, I guess if you're an actor, the biggest compliment you can give yourself is if you can fool people into thinking that you're real.
Absolutely. And they don't even think to some of them are so involved in this method acting of getting in that role that they don't even flinch. They might be asked questions about things like crime and what they're involved in, but they're so involved in the method part of it that that information doesn't even think to compute later on, and any kind of human being that would be in a sound state of mind might think, oh, should I go to the police about what's just happened? Because they were talking about all this kind of stuff about crime and jail and committing fraud. I wonder whether I could become a part of that, but that doesn't even cross their mind, kind of thing,
I
which
guess
is a bit wild.
I was talking to someone the other week, and he was telling me about an actor who I won't mention on here, for fear of getting in trouble, who was that into his method acting that for one of the TV shows he was in, he actually like self harmed so he could have proper like emotions and cry on the screen when his character did. And I
Mm.
just thought that was fascinating. But
Well, they say
yeah,
like Heath Ledger was fully immersed in the role of the Joker in Batman, and that's what like basically led to him being in the situation that he was in, was because he was just completely submerged in the thoughts and feelings of his character, that led him to like the places that he kind of went to. But it's wild, isn't it?
it is, yeah.
Well, he
So
went off topic now.
we did, yeah. Sorry, people. Hope that was okay for you. So for one last time, if we say for you to do so, I'd like all of you to relax. Close your eyes and picture the scene. I'd like you to think about all those times you've ever had to try to get credit, ever for a loan, a mortgage, or anything similar. All the hoops that you had to go through. Maybe all you ever needed was to hire an actor and do a Google search for common Chinese names. So, thank you all. Take care and stay safe.
Thanks,
Goodbye, all.
guys. Bye.